so mysterious.
This is who we are.
This is who we are.
WAVR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. ECOWAS Chair President Mada Biu in Bissau as part of his West African tour. Ivorian electoral umpire sets date for legislative elections. WTO Director General Konjiwela calls for social safety nets after meeting with Nigerian President Tinubu.
This is a fund that is jointly managed by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the ITC, the International Trade Center in Geneva. And the idea is to help support the economy and support women to be able to weather the storms of the economy.
Election observer missions push for Ghana EC appointment overall, lower presidential age limit.
We've had some of these independent purging of politicians from top positions of election management bodies. And let me also say, not only peculiar to Ghana, these recommendations have been made across some of African countries, especially by the African Union.
Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast this evening. Let's begin with the ECOWAS Chair and Sierra Leonean President Julius Maada Bio's continuing diplomatic tour of several West African capitals. Earlier this Thursday, he was received in Bissau by his counterpart, Omar Sissoko Embalo, to strengthen bilateral cooperation and reaffirm regional commitment to addressing common challenges. Christopher Ticho has more details in this report.
The two heads of state held a working meeting focused on strengthening bilateral cooperation. They expressed their shared desire to deepen partnerships in strategic areas including energy, public health, infrastructure, public sector reform, as well as economic and trade exchanges. This visit to Bissau marks a new stage in a West African tour recently undertaken by Maada Bio to strengthen regional cohesion. Recall on August 9, he was in Lomé for talks with Togolese President Faure Gnassingbé, with the priority of strengthening security and economic prosperity in the sub-region. On August 10, he traveled to Ghana to attend a memorial service alongside President John Dramani Mahama for the victims of the helicopter crash. On August 11, he was in Abidjan for a meeting with Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara, where they discussed the major issues affecting the sub-region and expressed commitment to strengthening collaboration within the regional bloc. Through this tour, Julius Maada Bio seeks to give new impetus to ECOWAS regional diplomacy in a context marked by growing security, political and economic challenges in West Africa. As at the time of filing this report, he arrived in the Gambia and currently holding talks with President Adama Barrow.
Christopher Ticho with that report. Well, we will follow his visit to the Gambia and bring you details in our subsequent bulletin. In the meantime, let's take you to Cote d'Ivoire, where the Independent Electoral Commission (IEC) has proposed December 27, 2025 as the date for the next legislative elections. The announcement comes in a tense electoral climate just over 2 months before the presidential poll set for October 25, 2025, and with the mandate of Ivorian lawmakers expiring on December 31, 2025. Augustin Koli completes the story.
The Independent Electoral Commission President Ibrahim Coulibaly Kubert told political parties and potential candidates in Abidjan on Thursday that the schedule is designed to meet constitutional deadlines and allow the new parliament to convene on January 19, 2025. He stressed that the Constitution and Electoral Code required elections to be held before the current legislature's mandate ends. The Electoral Commission will submit a formal proposal to the government for approval and has pledged to assist candidates in obtaining key administrative documents, including birth certificates, nationality certificates, criminal records, and tax clearance forms. The legislative campaign will run from December 19 to 25, possibly extending to December 26. Coulibaly Kubert also assured that the chosen date avoids overlapping with the presidential election process. Candidate submissions will open after provincial and presidential results are announced no later than October 30, 2025. He added that revising the voters' roll before the legislative vote is impossible due to the lengthy process, which takes 6 to 7 months. Some opposition groups have already raised concerns over transparency, logistical readiness, and the independence of the Electoral Commission. The legislative elections will determine the makeup of the next National Assembly, which plays a key role in approving laws and providing oversight of the executive.
Augustine Coley with that report. Niger's Autonomous Union of Magistrates, SAMAN, says that it's heading to court to challenge its dissolution by the Interior Minister. The decision issued on August 7 is being described by SAMAN as arbitrary and a flagrant violation of international labor conventions, including ILO Conventions 87 and 98. The union says the move is unacceptable and an attack on magistrates' rights to organize, undermines the separation of powers and damages institutional credibility. Sankuli Janko completes the story.
In a statement, Simon accused the Justice Minister Aliou Dauda of the personal relentlessness and trying to justify the unjustifiable at an August 8 press briefing. It's now calling on judges, civil society and the media to stand up for judicial independence and reject any political interference in the courts. The union's stance echoes concerns raised by other professional bodies and civil society groups who have condemned the dissolution as an attack on union rights and judicial autonomy. Authorities, however, defend the decision, citing alleged internal dysfunctions, ethical breaches, and unrealistic demands. It comes against the backdrop of tighter restrictions on civil liberties since the July 2023 coup, with the ruling junta increasing pressure on unions and civic organizations. Legal experts note that if the court rules in Saman's favor, it could set a significant precedent for union rights in Niger, especially in the current political climate. They warn, however, that the judiciary itself faces growing political pressure, which could complicate the outcome. Meanwhile, rights groups across the region are monitoring the case closely. Some have hinted at taking the matter to international forums, arguing that Niger's action could breach its commitments on the African and global human rights treaties.
Thank you, Janko, for that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And to more stories, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has called on the federal government to put social safety nets in place for poor Nigerians who are feeling the pains of President Bola Tinubu's economic reforms. Okonjo-Iweala stated this on Thursday after a meeting with the president at the Aso Villa in Abuja. Though she commended the president for the economic reforms, including petrol subsidy removal and the unification of the foreign exchange windows, the former finance minister said the government must put social safety nets in place for poor Nigerians to cope with the economic hardship occasioned by the government reforms. Tinubu, who launched a string of economic reforms when he assumed office in May 2023, has come under heavy criticism in over 2 years, as many Nigerians have attributed soaring food inflation and skyrocketing cost of living to Major League's removal of petrol subsidy and the unification of foreign exchange windows. Here's Okonjo-Iweala speaking with newsmen after the meeting.
Well, it was a very good visit, and thanks to Mr. President for making the time. We came to brief him about something very joyful that we did today with the help of the First Lady. We launched a Women Exporters Fund for the digital economy. This is a fund that is jointly managed by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the ITC, the International Trade Center in Geneva. And the idea is to help support the economy and support women to be able to weather the storms of the economy and be able to create jobs for themselves, for others, is part of thinking of what is a social safety net. How can we help support Nigerian women to contribute more to the economy and to themselves? So we came to brief Mr. President about this fund, which we launched. We had 67,000 Nigerian women who applied for this, and 146, can you imagine, 67,000, 146 won, and they are going to have money disbursed directly to them. 16 of them won what we call the booster track. Those who already have businesses, but their businesses will be scaled up. They will receive technical and business support for 18 months from the WTO and the ITC.
I was Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. In the meantime, the Commonwealth and African Union observers' missions for Ghana's 2024 general elections have called for sweeping electoral reforms with a strong emphasis on how Electoral Commission EC commissioners are appointed. In a joint statement, the two groups recommended a transparent, merit-based appointment process with fixed terms and clear criteria, arguing it will eliminate political suspicion and strengthen the EC's independence. They also proposed lowering the minimum age for presidential candidates from 40 to 35, alongside similar reforms for parliamentary aspirants to create opportunities for younger leadership. According to the report, Ghana's youthful population is locked out of leadership. The observer stressed that lowering the age limit would open the door for fresh, innovative leadership, but added that the real challenge lies in restoring trust in the Electoral Commission. The 2024 elections are Ghana's ninth since returning to multi-party democracy were generally peaceful, but the observers warned that these reforms must be implemented well before the next polls. Paul Mensah Rampam, Programs Director at the Center for Democratic Development in charge of election security, described the proposals as long overdue.
It's been repetitive. When you pick most of the weather mission reports, especially from 2012, since I joined the CODEO Security Sector Election Observation Group, we've had some of these independent purging of politicians from top positions of election management bodies. And let me also say, not only peculiar to Ghana, these recommendations have been made across some of African countries, especially by the African Union. And I say it's a good call because don't forget, we always say that every opposition political party has an issue with the elections management body. It's because mostly of the appointment of the top notch of the EC officials, especially in the last two appointments and the circumstances leading to the appointment. So I believe it's a good call that we have to put into our reforms. There are so many processes we can adopt. There are operational processes, there are legal processes, and there are structures that we can put in place. The operational processes, as CODEO has been making in its post-election review workshops, is building broad consensus, allowing stakeholder input into the process.
Paul Mensah Brampa is a Programs Director at the Center for Democratic Development in charge of election security. Meanwhile, the latest Afrobarometer report highlights concern regarding youth participation in Africa's democracy. The 2024 study indicates that young people across the continent, including those in Ghana, are less engaged in voting, community meetings, and other civic activities compared to older generations. The only area where youth show significant involvement is in protests. According to the report, these generational gaps emphasize the challenges of political participation on the world's most useful continent, especially if governments fail to establish channels for meaningful engagement. Nadi Detete reports.
The report, based on more than 53,000 face-to-face interviews across 39 African countries, reveals that people aged 18 to 35 are far less likely to vote, join community meetings, or contact leaders compared to older citizens. The biggest gap is in voting, where youth are 18 percentage points less likely to cast their ballots. Countries like Senegal, Cameroon, and Zimbabwe recorded the widest differences, while Ghana's figures also reflected their generational divide. When it comes to other forms of civic engagement, young people are less likely to feel close to a political party, attend meetings, or work with others to raise issues. However, the trend changes when protests are involved. In several countries, including Tunisia and Sudan, youth protest participation is significantly higher than that of older citizens. Afrobarometer says the findings are a warning sign for Africa, the most youthful continent. Without creating more meaningful opportunities for political involvement, governments risk alienating a generation that may prefer taking grievances to the streets rather than the ballot box. For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. ECOWAS Chair President Wadr visits Bissau as part of his West African tour. Ivorian electoral umpire sets date for legislative elections. WTO Director Okonjo-Iweala calls for social safety nets after meeting with Nigerian President Tinubu. Election observer missions push for Ghana EC appointment overhaul, lower presidential age limit. And still ahead in Liberia, 2 dead, others critically ill as Human Rights Commission calls for regional approach to combat drug crisis. We do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We're streaming live on wadr.org and follow our streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Elsewhere, Liberia is grappling with a growing drug addiction crisis, despite ongoing efforts by civil society groups and government initiatives. In the latest incident, 2 individuals have died and 2 others are in critical condition after consuming an unidentified substance in the Soul Clinic community of Montserrado County. This tragedy comes less than a week after a coalition of civil society organizations launched a nationwide anti-drug campaign on August 7, 2025. The coalition called on the government to take urgent action to curb the rising number of young people falling victim to drug abuse across the country. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Since the August 7 Say No to Drugs march, community residents across the country have begun demolishing structures believed to host drug dealers and users, highlighting the populace's desperation for solutions. However, this approach lacks the support of a robust policy. A recent incident on August 13 in the Soul Clinic community of Montserrado County saw 2 drug users died and 2 others require urgent medical attention after consuming an unidentified substance. Amidst the grief, community members are urging the government to take a decisive action to prevent further loss of the younger generation.
All these people that are in a fight against drugs, are we waiting to lose a whole generation to drug abuse before we be intentional about the fight? We said it now, we know that people are selling the drugs in our community. We won't do nothing. We say we're waiting for performance before we can react. Liberia, wake up. Our little boy that the same network for rehabilitation. Few months back, he got where he came back. Just take for prevention for in the fight against drugs.
Meanwhile, the chairperson of the Independent National Commission on Human Rights, Councillor Dempster Brand, is urging leaders within the Mano River Union to collaborate on strategies to combat drug use, which is eroding the fabric of African society. According to experts, the fight against drug addiction requires an approach encompassing not only community-led initiatives and government policies, but also regional cooperation to stem the tide of this growing crisis. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview takes us to Benin, where the major opposition party, the Democrats, is reacting to the electoral calendar recently unveiled by the National Autonomous Electoral Commission for the 2026 general elections. The party expresses particular concern about the candidate sponsorship system. It previously criticized the postponement of the deadline for withdrawing sponsorship forms, originally set for the end of July, a deadline which has since been extended to September 2 following public pressure. Our guest, Gafudu Sakpohu, an independent journalist and political analyst in Benin.
The key issues that the opposition is mainly concerned about is related to the choice, the parliamentarian and other mayors that are supposed to give their support to each party for the election. It seems supposed to be done prior to the dates that all the candidates have, all the parties have to let their candidates know. But unfortunately, they don't have this opportunity to do that. So at least this cannot be known until October 12th.
So how is this creating a lot of tension in the country at the moment?
Well, the main tension actually is, apart from the calendar, is mainly this. The code says that the electoral code says you need to get like 20% in each constituency, and for all the 24 constituencies. Now, the question was put during the meeting that the president had with the youth. There is this young lady that asked the president, but what will happen if a party does not really meet that requirement? Maybe actually misses one constituency. And the president said, well, if it happens, then we have to then address to the Constitutional Court to resolve the issue. Then the opposition is saying, but this is a situation we are avoiding. We've been asking for long.
We know President Talon says he's not contesting 2026 election. From indications that you are picking, does that suggest so?
Yeah, I confirmed that. He said it at the meeting with the youth. He said it over and over again. But it's still like the opposition and many other people still don't believe, or there is a suspicion of something that's going to happen. The president may not come back, maybe, but something that will favor maybe a choice of the president, the candidate of the president.
While the electoral calendar is open for citizens or for electorate to go and then cross-check their names, are there provisions made by SENA, the National Autonomous Electoral Commission, to rectify any anomalies that any voter may have come across?
No, there's no provision that enables, based on what the commission says and what the government says, there's no way any change or amendment can be made in the code by the Electoral Commission. Things are just left like that. This is according to the law. There's no chance anything can be done before the election to change any anomalies. The government, the president, they are aware that there might be some anomalies at the end of the day, but they're just not really ready to, because any change to that may not favor them.
And so does that suggest that if, let's say, a particular voter is supposed to vote in constituency A and then his name is not in the electoral list in constituency A, but rather in constituency B, which may disenfranchise that particular voter, there is no space for any correction for name transfers and stuff like that in this particular calendar released?
Well, it's not this government. They are known for changing the rules during the game. We had a situation during the last parliamentary election where something happened, and the government then suspended the process to change a provision not to. So if this happens on the ruling party side, I think that there might be, this may repeat again, like they may suspend and say, okay, let's change the rules, and then in order to get the problem solved.
Gafudu Sakbo is an independent journalist and political analyst in Benin. Well, in sport news, CAF has sanctioned the football federations of Morocco, Kenya and Zambia over disciplinary and regulatory breaches during the 2024 African Nations Championship CHAN. Morocco's federation was fined $5,000 with half suspended for inappropriate player behavior during a match against Kenya. Kenya received the heaviest penalty, a $50,000 fine for major security lapses that allow fans to force entry into the stadium, prompting police to use tear gas and live ammunition. CAF warned that continued failures could see Kenya's home matches moved elsewhere. Zambia was fined $5,000 for failing to present its head coach at the mandatory pre-match press briefing. The sanctions underscore CAF's push to enforce discipline, security and media compliance during the CHAN co-hosted by Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. In the meantime, India plans to bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games, with New Delhi, Bhubaneswar and Ahmedabad home to the world's largest cricket stadium among potential host cities. The move is part of a broader ambition to also host the 2036 Olympics. The Indian Olympic Association has until the end of August to submit its bid, with a decision due in November in Glasgow. If successful, India promises a full-scale event featuring sports it excels in, including kabaddi and kho-kho. The bid comes as the Games struggle to find hosts after Victoria, Australia withdrew from the 2026 edition. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Sheikh Jai for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, Instagram, TikTok, at WADR English. Well, coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship environment program, Enviroscope. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Baga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.